The Taiwan Strait is 110 miles wide. On a clear morning, you can almost see both shores. On a clear morning, both sides can definitely see each other. China has never formally renounced force as a path to reunification. Taiwan has never formally declared independence. The United States has never formally committed to what it would do if China moved. That deliberate ambiguity has kept an uneasy peace for 50 years. But ambiguity has a shelf life, and right now, Beijing has decided the window is open. The order goes out. The largest amphibious operation attempted since the Second World War begins to move. Can Taiwan survive a full Chinese military assault? And what does the world look like on the other side? Whatever that other side turns out to be. This is a simulation built from real order of battle data, published wargame results, and a lot of late-night reading. Not a prediction. What the evidence points toward when you take it seriously. Taiwan has governed itself since 1949. 23 million people. Their own elected government. Their own military. Their own semiconductor industry, producing the majority of the world's most advanced chips. The kind that go into everything from smartphones to missile guidance systems. The island is not just a political dispute. It is the foundational node of the global technology supply chain, and everyone involved knows it. China's position under its current leadership has hardened into something close to a deadline. Military readiness for a reunification operation has been cited by United States intelligence assessments as a near-term internal goal. The Taiwan Strait saw over 1,700 People's Liberation Army aircraft incursions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone in a single recent year. That number is not a patrol. That is a rehearsal. What Taiwan has built in response deserves genuine respect because it is the reason this scenario is not simple. Roughly 170,000 active military personnel with reserve mobilization capacity in the millions. Indigenous Xiongfeng, 3 supersonic anti-ship missiles fired from coastal batteries. Tiankung, 3 surface-to-air missile systems covering approaches from the west. And the island itself, a natural fortress, a steep central mountain range running the length of the country. Dense urban coastline. The total number of beaches assessed as militarily viable for a large-scale amphibious landing is approximately 14. Not 1,400. 14. That is the entire invasion corridor. All of it. On a stretch of coast you could drive end to end in an afternoon. Fishermen in northwestern Taiwan have spent years learning to distinguish the low-frequency drone of Chinese naval exercises from ordinary weather. That sound has become part of the texture of daily life there, the way people elsewhere learn to read the sky before a storm. The People's Liberation Army in 2025 is not the force that stood helpless in 1996, when 2 American carrier groups transited the strait and Beijing had no credible response. That moment ended. China noticed. They spent the following 3 decades making sure it could never happen again, and the force they built reflects exactly that grievance. The PLA Navy is now the largest navy in the world, by hull count, roughly 370 warships, more hulls than the entire United States Navy surface fleet. Each one does not need to be better. There simply need to be enough. The Dongfeng 26 anti-ship ballistic missile has a reported range of approximately 4,000 kilometers, enough to threaten American bases on Guam from the Chinese coast. That is not a coastal defense weapon. That is a message to the entire Western Pacific. The PLA rocket force fields an estimated 2,000 ballistic and cruise missiles within range of Taiwan, a volume that exceeds Taiwan's total point defense interceptor capacity by a wide margin. And the amphibious fleet, the piece everyone is watching, can currently support landing roughly 5 divisions in a first wave. 5 divisions. That figure, modest against the scale of a country China intends to occupy, is the number every serious analyst keeps coming back to, because it is the number that reveals the deepest tension in the entire plan. Amphibious operations are historically the most failure-prone category of military undertaking that exists. No logistics, no communication, no margin for error. The crossing window across the strait is narrow. The beaches are known and pre-targeted, and Taiwan is not going to be surprised. Hour zero does not start with landing ships. It starts with missiles. That is the playbook. Suppress air defenses, blind radar, cut communications, isolate the island before a single soldier reaches the shoreline. In the Operations Center of Eastern Theater Command, the launch sequence executes. Salvos of short-range ballistic missiles arc across the strait, targeting Taiwanese air bases, radar installations, and command nodes. The tactical logic is clean. 30 minutes of coordinated saturation strikes designed to paralyze before Taiwan can coordinate a coherent response. From the perspective of the systems executing it, this is a suppression problem with a known solution. On the receiving end, it does not feel like a problem with a known solution. The early warning system triggers. Alerts push to government networks, to emergency broadcast infrastructure, to the phones of 23 million people simultaneously. In the capital, the streets do not empty slowly. They empty fast. The way people move when something they have rehearsed in drills becomes suddenly and irrevocably real. Underground stations fill within minutes. On air bases in the northwest, pilots sprint toward hardened shelters. Some aircraft were dispersed to secondary sites in advance. Some were not. The Patriot batteries fire. Some intercept. Some do not. What a near-miss ballistic missile impact feels like to someone 2 kilometers away is not an explosion in the way movies have trained anyone to expect. It is a pressure wave that arrives in the chest before the ears register sound, and then a crack that rewrites every sensory assumption a person has about how loud the world can be. Then, car alarms, citywide, in every direction at once. Taiwan has never seen anything like this at this scale. Neither, truthfully, has China. The air battle that follows over the strait is genuinely contested, which matters because the narrative that a modern military simply erases a smaller one does not hold here. Taiwan's F-16Vs, upgraded to roughly the equivalent of Block 70 standard, are flown by well-trained pilots who have been preparing for this specific engagement for their entire professional careers. The PLA commits J-20 stealth fighters with electronic warfare support from jamming aircraft. Both sides take losses. Taiwan loses aircraft it cannot easily replace. China loses aircraft its leadership did not expect to lose. Somewhere in that arithmetic, the first real complication of the campaign begins to emerge. Coastal anti-ship batteries fire Xiongfeng 3 missiles at the advancing PLA naval surface groups. Several vessels are hit. On the bridge of a PLA destroyer managing flooding in its forward compartment, the crew runs damage control procedures rehearsed hundreds of times in training, but never like this. Never with the specific weight of real water moving through a real ship. 40 kilometers east, a Taiwanese coastal battery crew finishes a reload cycle in a hardened tunnel and checks their phones for news about the port city outside the blast doors. Neither crew can see the other. Both know the other is there. The amphibious force approaches the northwestern beaches under combined air and naval cover. The beaches are mined. The terrain above them has been pre-registered by Taiwanese artillery for years. Anti-armor teams are positioned in urban terrain that offers defending infantry every possible advantage over forces arriving wet, disoriented, and under fire. The first wave of PLA Marines reaches shore under conditions no exercise fully replicates. Some landing craft are destroyed in the surf zone. Others make it. Urban combat begins almost immediately, not in open fields where volume of force is decisive, but in the specific hell of building-to-building attrition, where the defender, who knows every alley and stairwell, has an asymmetric edge that no missile can neutralize in advance. Taiwan's reserve mobilization is uneven. It is also real. Civilian infrastructure becomes part of the defensive architecture. That is the part of this scenario that does not show up cleanly in satellite imagery or order of battle assessments, and it is the part that has broken better-equipped militaries than this one. But here is where it gets complicated. China can damage Taiwan severely. What it cannot do is occupy a hostile island of 23 million people who have been told for decades exactly what occupation would mean, and believed it. Every serious war game conducted by major research institutions in the last 5 years, including publicly released results from think tanks that do this work professionally, has arrived at the same uncomfortable conclusion. China can hurt Taiwan badly. Holding it is a different question, and the costs required to even attempt an answer are staggering. The prize is also poisoned. Taiwan has reportedly discussed contingency demolition of its most advanced semiconductor fabrication facilities, rather than allow their seizure. A China that wins and inherits rubble does not win the 21st century technology competition. It loses it alongside everyone else, which means the country that spent 30 years building toward this moment may be building toward a strategic outcome it cannot actually use. The external variables compound every internal one. United States forces in the region would almost certainly respond in some capacity. The precise form of that response is the critical unknown, but American submarine interdiction of PLA shipping lanes alone would impose losses on the amphibious logistics chain that change the timeline of everything downstream. Japan's decision about whether American bases in Okinawa, 400 miles from Taiwan's northern coast, can be used in support operations is arguably the single most consequential variable in the entire scenario, and it is a decision Tokyo has not publicly committed to. Every week the campaign extends, the global economic consequences of sanctions, disrupted shipping, and technology supply chain collapse accumulate into a weight that no military victory can offset. Russia's experience after 2022 is the current reference point for what comprehensive economic isolation looks like in real time, and Beijing has studied it carefully. The honest resolution of the central question is this: Taiwan's defense is far more credible than casual outside observers tend to assume. China's military capacity is far more formidable than optimistic outside observers tend to assume. The scenario most likely to end in Taiwan's defeat is not the dramatic beach assault, not the missile barrage. It is a sustained blockade and siege, a slow strangulation that does not make for dramatic footage, but that forces a different kind of calculation, one that depends heavily on whether the rest of the world is willing to maintain the cost of resistance over months or years rather than days. Deterrence, when it holds, leaves no monument, no ceremony, no footage, no clear moment of resolution. The people who live beside it know it in the particular way you know a thing that never quite arrives. If this scenario stays contained, the residents of coastal cities in Taiwan will describe the period the way people describe near misses that change them without killing them. The specific smell of a shelter, concrete and recycled air. The particular silence after an all-clear siren stops. A phone notification that arrived when it could have easily not arrived. Those details do not become history. They become the texture of a generation. If it does not stay contained, the strait itself enters a different kind of memory. Not as a geographic feature, as a threshold. Sailors and pilots who passed through it will tell their version of what they saw and could not name. Civilians on both shores will frame it in the only language available to them, whatever that language turns out to be, in a world that does not yet have the vocabulary for what a 21st century war over the technology supply chain actually feels like to the people inside it. 110 miles of gray water. Two shores that can almost see each other on a clear morning. The clearest thing about the Taiwan Strait right now is that everyone on both sides knows exactly what the other is capable of. That knowledge is either the thing that prevents this from happening or the last thing that did not.